Polygamy. The Tettigonidae have polygamous relationships. The first male to mate is guaranteed an extremely high confidence of paternity when a second male couples at the termination of female sexual refractoriness. The nutrients that the offspring ultimately receive will increase their fitness. The second male to mate with the female at the termination of her refractory period is usually cuddled. 28. Competition. The polygamous relationships of the Tettigonidae lead to high levels of male-male competition. Male competition is caused by the decreased availability of males able to supply nutritious spermaphalanges to the females. Females produce more eggs on a high-quality diet. Thus, the female looks for healthier males with a more nutritious spermatophylax. Females use the sound created by the male to judge his fitness. The louder and more fluent the trill, the higher the fitness of the male. 29. Stress response. In species which produce larger food gifts, the female often seeks out the males to copulate. This, however, is a cost to females as they risk predation while searching for males. Also, a cost-benefit trade-off exists in the size of the spermatophore which the male tettigonids produce. When males possess a large spermatophore, they benefit by being more highly selected for by females, but they are only able to mate 1 to 2 times during their lifetimes. Inversely, male Tettigonidae with smaller spermatophores have the benefit of being able to mate 2 to 3 times per night, but have lower chances of being selected by females. Even in times of nutritional stress, male Tettigonidae continue to invest nutrients within their spermatophores. In some species, the cost of creating the chanting Lo your Vesper hymns. Spermatophore is low, but even in those which it is not low, it is still not beneficial to reduce the quality of the spermatophore, as it would lead to lower reproductive selection and success. This low reproductive success is attributed to some Tettigonidae species in which the spermatophylax that the female receives as a food gift from the male during copulation increases the reproductive output of the reproduction attempt. However, in other cases, the female receives few, if any, benefits. 30. The reproductive behavior of bush crickets has been studied in great depth. Studies found that the tuberous bush cricket, Platycales affini, has the largest testes in proportion to body mass of any animal recorded. They account for 14% of the insect's body mass and are thought to enable a fast rematting rate. 31. List of orthopteroid genera containing species recorded in Europe. Grillidae. The family Grillidae contains the subfamilies and genera which entomologists now term true crickets. Having long, whip-like antennae, they belong to the orthopteran suborder Encephera, which has been greatly reduced in the last 100 years, e.g. IMS 3 taxa such as the tree crickets, spider crickets and their allies, sword-tail crickets, wood or ground crickets and scaly crickets have been moved or elevated to family level. The type genus is Gryllus and the first use of the family name, Grillidae, was by Francis Walker. 4. They have a worldwide distribution, except Antarctica. 2. The most familiar field crickets, Grillinae, are characteristically robust brown or black insects. 5. The largest members of the family are the 5 cm 2 in long bull crickets, Brachytroops, which excavate burrows a meter or more deep. A. Many taxa in the Encephera may be called crickets sensulato, including the Rhaphidophoridae, cave or camel crickets, Stenopelmatidae, Jerusalem or sand crickets, Mogoplastidae, scaly crickets, Grillotalpidae, mole crickets, Anabris, Mormon crickets, Myrmecophilidae, ant crickets, and Tettigonidae, the bush crickets or katydids. Cricket insect. Crickets are orthopteran insects which are related to bush crickets, and, more distantly, to grasshoppers. In older literature, such as IMS 3 crickets, were placed at the family level, i.e. Grillidae, but contemporary authorities including now place them in the superfamily Grilloidea. 1. The word has been used in combination to describe more distantly related taxa, 3 in the suborder Encephera, such as king crickets and mole crickets. Crickets have mainly cylindrically shaped bodies. Crickets have mainly cylindrically shaped bodies, round heads, and long antennae. Behind the head is a smooth, robust pronotum. The abdomen ends in a pair of long cerci. Females have a long, cylindrical ovipositor. Diagnostic features include legs with 3 segmented tarsi. As with many Orthoptera, the hind legs have enlarged femora, providing power for jumping. The front wings are adapted as tough, leathery elytra, and some crickets chirp by rubbing parts of these together. The hind wings are membranous and folded when not in use for flight. Many species, however, are flightless. The largest members of the family are the bull crickets, Brachytroops, which are up to 5 cm 2 in long. Crickets are distributed all around the world except at latitudes 55 degrees or higher, with the greatest diversity being in the tropics. They occur in varied habitats from grassland, bushes, and forests to marshes, beaches, and caves. Crickets are mainly nocturnal, and are best known for the loud, persistent, chirping song of males trying to attract females, although some species are mute. The singing species have good hearing, via the tympana on the tibia of the front legs. Crickets often appear as characters in literature. The talking cricket features in Carlo Collodi's 1883 children's book, The Adventures of Pinocchio, and in films based on the book. The insect is central to Charles Dickens' 1845 The Cricket on the Hearth and George Selden's 1960 The Cricket in Times Square. Crickets are celebrated in poems by William Wordsworth, John Keats, Dufour and Vladimir Nazar. They are kept as pets in countries from China to Europe, sometimes for cricket fighting. Crickets are efficient at converting their food into body mass, making them a candidate for food production. They are used as human food in Southeast Asia, where they are sold deep-fried in markets as snacks. They are also used to feed carnivorous pets and zoo animals. In Brazilian folklore, crickets feature as omens of various events. African field cricket, Gryllus bimaculatus. Crickets are small to medium-sized insects with mostly cylindrical, somewhat vertically flattened bodies. The head is spherical with long slender antennae arising from cone-shaped scapes, first segments, and just behind these are two large compound eyes. On the forehead are three ocelli, simple eyes. The pronotum, first thoracic segment, is trapezoidal in shape, robust, and well sclerotized. It is smooth and has neither dorsal nor lateral keels, ridges. 4. At the tip of the abdomen is a pair of long cerci paired appendages on rearmost segment, and in females, the ovipositor is cylindrical, long and narrow, smooth and shiny. The femora, third segments, of the back pair of legs are greatly enlarged for jumping. The tibiae, fourth segments, of the hind legs are armed with a number of movable spurs, the arrangement of which is characteristic of each species. The tibia of the front legs bear one or more tympani which are used for the reception of sound. 4. The wings lie flat on the body and are very variable in size between species, being reduced in size in some crickets and missing in others. The forewings are elytra made of tough chitin, acting as a protective shield for the soft parts of the body, and in males, bear the cricket insect. Temporal range, 1. Juvenile Gryllus campestris. Scientific classification domain, Eukaryota kingdom, Animalia phylum, Arthropoda class, Insecta order, Orthoptera suborder, Encephera infraorder, Gryllidae superfamily, Grylloidea. Lie charting, 1781, 2. Families. See taxonomy section synonyms, 2. Gryllides lie charting, 1781. Paragryllidae de Sutter Grandcolas, 1987. Description. Stridulatory organs for the production of sound. The hind pair is membranous, folding fan-wise under the forewings. In many species, the wings are not adapted for flight. 1. The largest members of the family are the 5 cm, 2 in long bull crickets, brachytroops, which excavate burrows a meter or more deep. The tree crickets, Ocanthinae, are delicate white or pale green insects with transparent forewings, while the field crickets, Gryllinae, are robust brown or black insects. 1. Distribution and habitat. Crickets have a cosmopolitan distribution, being found in all parts of the world with the exception of cold regions at latitudes higher than about 55 degrees north and south. They have colonized many large and small islands, sometimes flying over the sea to reach these locations, or perhaps conveyed on floating timber or by human activity. The greatest diversity occurs in tropical locations, such as in Malaysia, where 88 species were heard chirping from a single location near Kuala Lumpur. A greater number than this could have been present because some species are mute. 1. Crickets are found in many habitats. Members of several subfamilies are found in the upper tree canopy, in bushes, and among grasses and herbs. They also occur on the ground and in caves, and some are subterranean, excavating shallow or deep burrows. Some make home in rotting wood, and certain beach-dwelling species can run and jump over the surface of water. 1. Biology. Defense. Crickets are relatively defenseless, soft-bodied insects. Most species are nocturnal and spend the day hidden in cracks, under bark, inside curling leaves, under stones or fallen logs, in leaf litter, or in the cracks in the ground that develop in dry weather. Some excavate their own shallow holes in rotting wood or underground and fold in their antennae to conceal their presence. Some of these burrows are temporary shelters, used for a single day, but others serve as more permanent residences and places for mating and laying eggs. Crickets burrow by loosening the soil with the mandibles and then carrying it with the limbs, flicking it backwards with the hind legs or pushing it with the head. 5. Other defensive strategies are the use of camouflage, fleeing, and aggression. Some species have adopted colorings, shapes, and patterns that make it difficult for predators that hunt by sight to detect them. They tend to be dull shades of brown, gray, and green that blend into their background, and desert species tend to be pale. Some species can fly, but the mode of flight tends to be clumsy, so the most usual response to danger is to scuttle away to find a hiding place. 5. While some crickets have a weak bite, a member of the Gryllocrididae or raspy crickets from Australia were found to have the strongest bite of any insect. 6. Chirping. A male Gryllus cricket chirping. Its head faces its burrow. The leathery forewings tegmina, singular, tegmen, are raised clear of the more delicate hind wings, and are being scraped against each other, stridulation, to produce the song. The burrow acts as a resonator, amplifying the sound. Most male crickets make a loud chirping sound by stridulation, scraping two specially textured body parts together. The stridulatory organ is located on the tegmen, or forewing, which is leathery in texture. A large vein runs along the center of each tegmen, with cone-like serrations on its edge forming a file-like structure, and at the rear edge of the tegmen is a scraper. The tegmina are held at an angle to the body and rhythmically raised and lowered, which causes the scraper on one wing to rasp on the file on the other. The central part of the tegmen contains the harp, an area of thick, sclerotized membrane which resonates and amplifies the volume of sound, as does the pocket of air between the tegmina and the body wall. Most female crickets lack the necessary adaptations to stridulate, so make no sound. 7. Several types of cricket songs are in the repertoire of some species. The calling song attracts females and repels other males, and is fairly loud. The courting song is used when a female cricket is near and encourages her to mate with the caller. A triumphal song is produced for a brief period after a successful mating and may reinforce the mating bond to encourage the female to lay some eggs rather than find another male. 8. An aggressive song is triggered by contact chemoreceptors on the antennae that detect the presence of another male cricket. 9. Crickets chirp at different rates depending on their species and the temperature of their environment. Most species chirp at higher rates the higher the temperature is, about 62 chirps a minute at 13 degrees Celsius, 55 degrees Fahrenheit, in one common species. Each species has its own rate. The relationship between temperature and the rate of chirping is known as Dalbert's law. According to this law, counting the number of chirps produced in 14 seconds by the snowy tree cricket, common in the United States, and adding 40 will approximate the temperature in degrees Fahrenheit. 8. 011. The calling song of a field cricket. In 1975, Dr. William H. Cade discovered that the parasitic tachnid fly Ormia acracia is attracted to the song of the cricket, and uses it to locate the male to deposit her larva on him. It was the first known example of a natural enemy that locates its host or prey using the mating signal. 10. Since then, many species of crickets have been found to be carrying the same parasitic fly, or related species. In response to this selective pressure, a mutation leaving males unable to chirp was observed amongst a population of Tettigonidae oceanicus on the Hawaiian island of Kauai, enabling these crickets to elude their parasitoid predators. 11. A different mutation with the same effect was also discovered on the neighboring island of Oahu, ca. 100 miles 160 kilometers away. 12. Recently, new, purring, males of the same species in Hawaii are able to produce a novel auditory sexual signal that can be used to attract females while greatly reducing the likelihood of parasitoid attack from the fly. 13. In 1975, Dr. William H. Cade discovered that the parasitic tachnid fly Ormia acracia is attracted to the song of the cricket, and uses it to locate the male to deposit her larva on him. It was the first known example of a natural enemy that locates its host or prey using the mating signal. 10. Since then, many species of crickets have been found to be carrying the same parasitic fly, or related species. In response to this selective pressure, a mutation leaving males unable to chirp was observed amongst a population of Tettigonidae oceanicus on the Hawaiian island of Kauai, enabling these crickets to elude their parasitoid predators. 11. A different mutation with the same effect was also discovered on the neighboring island of Oahu, ca. 100 miles 160 kilometers away. 12. Recently, new, purring, males of the same species in Hawaii are able to produce a novel auditory sexual signal that can be used to attract females while greatly reducing the likelihood of parasitoid attack from the fly. 13. Flight. Some species, such as the ground crickets Nemobiinae, are wingless. Others have small forewings and no hindwings, Capholandrevis. Others lack hindwings and have shortened forewings in females only, while others are macropterous, with the hindwings longer than the forewings. In Tettigonidae, the proportion of macropterous individuals varies from very low to 100%. Probably, most species with hindwings longer than forewings engage in flight. 4. Some species, such as Gryllus assimilis, take off, fly, and land efficiently and well, while other species are clumsy flyers. 1. In some species, the hind wings are shed, leaving wing stumps, usually after dispersal of the insect by flight. In other species, they may be pulled off and consumed by the cricket itself or by another individual, probably providing a nutritional boost. 14. Gryllus firmus exhibits wing polymorphism. Some individuals have fully functional, long hind wings and others have short wings and cannot fly. The short-winged females have smaller flight muscles, greater ovarian development, and produce more eggs, so the polymorphism adapts the cricket for either dispersal or reproduction. In some long-winged individuals, the flight muscles deteriorate during adulthood and the insect's reproductive capabilities improve. 15. Diet. 2 adult domestic crickets, Acheta domesticus, feeding on carrot. Captive crickets are omnivorous. When deprived of their natural diet, they accept a wide range of organic foodstuffs. Some species are completely herbivorous, feeding on flowers, fruit, and leaves, with ground-based species consuming seedlings, grasses, pieces of leaf, and the shoots of young plants. Others are more predatory and include in their diet invertebrate eggs, larvae, pupae, molting insects, scale insects, and aphids. 16. Many are scavengers and consume various organic remains, decaying plants, seedlings, and fungi. 17. In captivity, many species have been successfully raised on a diet of ground, commercial dry dog food, supplemented with lettuce and aphids. 16. Crickets have relatively powerful jaws, and several species have been known to bite humans. 18. Reproduction and life cycle. Male crickets establish their dominance over each other by aggression. They start by lashing each other with their antennae and flaring their mandibles. Unless one retreats at this stage, they resort to grappling, at the same time each emitting calls that are quite unlike those uttered in other circumstances. When one achieves dominance, it sings loudly, while the loser remains silent. 19. Females are generally attracted to males by their calls, though in non-stridulatory species, some other mechanism must be involved. After the pair has made antennal contact, a courtship period may occur during which the character of the call changes. The female mounts the male and a single spermatophore is transferred to the external genitalia of the female. Sperm flows from this into the female's oviduct over a period of a few minutes or up to an hour, depending on species. After copulation, the female may remove or eat the spermatophore. Males may attempt to prevent this with various ritualized behaviors. The female may mate on several occasions with different males. 20. Various instars of Gryllus assimilis, by Robert Evans Snodgrass, 1930. Most crickets lay their eggs in the soil or inside the stems of plants, and to do this, female crickets have a long, needle-like or saber-like egg-laying organ called an ovipositor. Some ground-dwelling species have dispensed with this, either depositing their eggs in an underground chamber or pushing them into the wall of a burrow. 1. The short-tailed cricket Anurogryllus excavates a burrow with chambers and a defecating area, lays its eggs in a pile on a chamber floor, and after the eggs have hatched, feeds the juveniles for about a month. 21. Crickets are hemimetabolic insects, whose life cycle consists of an egg stage, a larval or nymph stage that increasingly resembles the adult form as the nymph grows, and an adult stage. The egg hatches into a nymph about the size of a fruit fly. This passes through about 10 larval stages, and with each successive molt, it becomes more like an adult. After the final molt, the genitalia and wings are fully developed, but a period of maturation is needed before the cricket is ready to breed. 22. Inbreeding avoidance. Some species of cricket are polyandrous. In Gryllus bimaculatus, the females select and mate with multiple viable sperm donors, preferring novel mates. 23. Female Tettigonidae oceanicus crickets from natural populations similarly mate and store sperm from multiple males. 24. Female crickets exert a post-copulatory fertilization bias in favor of unrelated males to avoid the genetic consequences of inbreeding. Fertilization bias depends on the control of sperm transport to the sperm storage organs. The inhibition of sperm storage by female crickets can act as a form of cryptic female choice to avoid the severe negative effects of inbreeding. 25. Controlled breeding experiments with the cricket Gryllus firmus demonstrated inbreeding depression, as nymphal weight and early fecundity declined substantially over the generations. 26. This was caused as expected by an increased frequency of homozygous combinations of deleterious recessive alleles. 26. 27. Predators, parasites, and pathogens. Crickets have many natural enemies and are subject to various pathogens and parasites. They are eaten by large numbers of vertebrate and invertebrate predators, and their hard parts are often found during the examination of animal intestines. 5. Mediterranean house geckos, Hemidactylus tursicus, have learned that although a calling-decorated cricket, Gryllodes supplicans, may be safely positioned in an out-of-reach burrow, female crickets attracted to the call can be intercepted and eaten. 19. Crickets are reared as food for pets and zoo animals like this baboon spider, Pterynochilus murinus, emerging from its den to feed. The entomopathogenic fungus Metarisum anisoplii attacks and kills crickets and has been used as the basis of control in pest populations. 5. The insects are also affected by the cricket paralysis virus, which has caused high levels of fatalities in cricket rearing facilities. 28. Other fatal diseases that have been identified in mass rearing establishments include rickettsia and 3 further viruses. The diseases may spread more rapidly if the crickets become cannibalistic and eat the corpses. 5. Red parasitic mites sometimes attach themselves to the dorsal region of crickets and may greatly affect them. 5. The horsehair worm Paragordius varius is an internal parasite and can control the behavior of its cricket host and cause it to enter water, where the parasite continues its life cycle and the cricket likely drowns. 29. The larvae of the sarcophagid fly Sarcophaga kelly develop inside the body cavity of field crickets. 30. Female parasitic wasps of Rhopalosoma lay their eggs on crickets, and their developing larvae gradually devour their hosts. Other wasps in the family Scelionidae are egg parasitoids, seeking out batches of eggs laid by crickets in plant tissues in which to insert their eggs. 5. The fly Ormia acratia has very acute hearing and targets calling male crickets. It locates its prey by ear and then lays its eggs nearby. The developing larvae burrow inside any crickets with which they come in contact and in the course of a week or so, devour what remains of the host before pupating. 31. In Florida, the parasitic flies were only present in the autumn, and at that time of year, the males sang less but for longer periods. A trade-off exists for the male between attracting females and being parasitized. 32. Cretaceous fossil cricket from Brazil. The phylogenetic relationships of the Gryllidae, summarized by Darrell Gwynn in 1995 from his own work using mainly anatomical characteristics, and that of earlier authors, are shown in the following cladogram, with the Orthoptera divided into 2 main groups, Encephera crickets sensulato, and Calyphera grasshoppers. Fossil Encephera are found from the late Carboniferous period, 300 Maya onwards, 33-34, and the true crickets, Gryllidae, from the Triassic period, 250 to 200 Maya. 1. A phylogenetic study by Yost and Shaw in 2006 using sequences from 18S, 28S, and 16S rRNA supported the monophyly of Encephera. Most Encepharan families were also found to be monophyletic, and the superfamily Gryllocridoidea was found to include Stenopelmatidae, Anastostomatidae, Gryllocrididae and Lesina. Schizodactylidae and Grylloidea were shown to be sister taxa, and phylogeny and taxonomy. Rhaphidophoridae and Tettigonidae were found to be more closely related to Grylloidea than had previously been thought. The authors stated that a high degree of conflict exists between the molecular and morphological data, possibly indicating that much homoplasy is present in Encephera, particularly in acoustic structures. They consider that tegmen stridulation and tibial tympanae are ancestral to Encephera and have been lost on multiple occasions, especially within the Gryllidae. In human culture. Il Grillo Parlante, the talking cricket, illustrated by Enrico Mazzanti for Carlo Collodi's 1883 children's book, Le Avventure di Pinocchio, The Adventures of Pinocchio. Folklore and myth. The folklore and mythology surrounding crickets is extensive. 36. The singing of crickets in the folklore of Brazil and elsewhere is sometimes taken to be a sign of impending rain, or of a financial windfall. In Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca's Chronicles of the Spanish Conquest of the Americas, the sudden chirping of a cricket heralded the sighting of land for his crew, just as their water supply had run out. 37. In Caraguatatuba, Brazil, a black cricket in a room is said to portend illness, a gray one, money, and a green one, hope. 37. In Alagoas State, northeast Brazil, a cricket announces death, thus it is killed if it chirps in a house. 38. In Barbados, a loud cricket means money is coming in, hence, a cricket must not be killed or evicted if it chirps inside a house. However, another type of cricket that is less noisy forebodes illness or death. 39. In literature. Illustration for Charles Dickens' 1883 Cricket on the Hearth by Fred Barnard. Crickets feature as major characters in novels and children's books. Charles Dickens' 1845 novella The Cricket on the Hearth, divided into sections called Chirps, tells the story of a cricket which chirps on the hearth and acts as a guardian angel to a family. 40. Carlo Collodi's 1883 children's book, L'Avventure di Pinocchio, The Adventures of Pinocchio featured Il Grillo Parlante, the talking cricket, as one of its characters. 41. George Selden's 1960 children's book The Cricket in Times Square tells the story of Chester the cricket from Connecticut who joins a family and their other animals, and is taken to see Times Square in New York. 42. The story, which won the Newbery Honor, 43 came to Selden on hearing a real cricket chirp in Times Square. 44. Souvenirs entomologiques, a book written by the French entomologist Jean-Henri Fabre, devotes a whole chapter to the cricket, discussing its construction of a burrow and its song-making. The account is mainly of the field cricket, but also mentions the Italian cricket. 45. Crickets have from time to time appeared in poetry. William Wordsworth's 1805 poem The Cottager to her infant includes the couplet, The kitten sleeps upon the hearth, the crickets long have ceased their mirth. 46. John Keats's 1819 poem Ode to Autumn includes the lines, Hedge crickets sing, and now with treble soft the redbreast whistles from a garden croft. 47. The Chinese Tang dynasty poet Du Fu, 712-770, wrote a poem that in the translation by J.P. Seaton begins, House cricket. Trifling thing. And yet how his mournful song moves us. Out in the grass his cry was a tremble, but now, he trills beneath our bed, to share his sorrow. 48. As pets and fighting animals. Meiji period cricket holder in the form of a Norimono palanquin, circa 1850. Crickets are kept as pets and are considered good luck in some countries. In China, they are sometimes kept in cages or in hollowed-out gourds specially created in novel shapes. 49. The practice was common in Japan for thousands of years. It peaked in the 19th century, though crickets are still sold at pet shops. 50. It is also common to have them as caged pets in some European countries, particularly in the Iberian Peninsula. Cricket fighting is a traditional Chinese pastime that dates back to the Tang dynasty, 618-907. Originally an indulgence of emperors, cricket fighting later became popular among commoners. 51. The dominance and fighting ability of males does not depend on strength alone. It has been found that they become more aggressive after certain pre-fight experiences such as isolation, or when defending a refuge. Crickets forced to fly for a short while will afterwards fight for 2 to 3 times longer than they otherwise would. 52. As food. Adabong Kamaru de Grillos Cebolleros. Deep-fried house crickets, Acheta domesticus, at a market in Thailand. In the southern part of Asia, including Cambodia, Laos, and Thailand, crickets commonly are eaten as a snack, prepared by deep-frying soaked and cleaned insects. 53. In Thailand, there are 20,000 farmers rearing crickets, with an estimated production of 7,500 tons per year. 54. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization has implemented a project in Laos to improve cricket farming and, consequently, food security. 55. The food conversion efficiency of house crickets, Acheta domesticus, is 1.7, some 5 times higher than that for beef cattle, and if their fecundity is taken into account, 15 to 20 times higher. 56. 57. Cricket flour may be used as an additive to consumer foods such as pasta, bread, crackers, and cookies. Cricket flour is used in protein bars, pet foods, livestock feed, nutraceuticals, and other industrial applications. The United Nations says that the use of insect protein, such as cricket flour, could be critical in feeding the growing population of the planet while being less damaging to the environment. 58. Crickets are also raised as food for carnivorous zoo animals, laboratory animals, and pets. 559. They may be gut-loaded, with additional minerals, such as calcium, to provide a balanced diet for predators such as tree frogs, Hylidae. 60. Common expressions. By the 19th century, cricket, and crickets, were in use as euphemisms for using Christ as an interjection. The addition of Jiminy, a variation of Gemini, sometimes shortened to Jimmy, created the expressions Jiminy Cricket or Jimmy Crickets as less blasphemous alternatives to exclaiming Jesus Christ. 61. By the end of the 20th century, the sound of chirping crickets came to represent quietude in literature, theater, and film. From this sentiment arose expressions equating crickets with silence altogether, particularly when a group of assembled people makes no noise. These expressions have grown from the more descriptive, so quiet that you can hear crickets, to simply saying crickets as shorthand for complete silence. 62. In popular culture. Jiminy Cricket, from Walt Disney's movie Pinocchio, 1940. Cricket characters feature in the Walt Disney animated movies Pinocchio, 1940, where Jiminy Cricket becomes the title character's conscience, and in Mulan, 1998, where Creaky is carried in a cage as a symbol of luck, in the Asian manner. The Crickets was the name of Buddy Holly's rock and roll band. 63. Holly's hometown baseball team in the 1990s was called the Lubbock Crickets. 64. Cricket is the name of a U.S. children's literary magazine founded in 1973. It uses a cast of insect characters. 65. The sound of crickets is often used in media to emphasize silence, often for comic effect after an awkward joke, in a similar manner to tumbleweed. Notes. A. Gwynn cites Onder 1939, Zuner 1939, Judd 1947, Key 1970, Ragg 1977 and Rentz 1991 as supporting the two-part scheme Encephera, Califera in his 1995 paper. Mole cricket. Mole crickets are members of the insect family Gryllothalpidae, in the order Orthoptera, grasshoppers, locusts, and crickets. Mole crickets are cylindrical-bodied, fossorial insects about 3 to 5 cm, 1.22.0 in long as adults, with small eyes and shovel-like forelimbs highly developed for burrowing. They are present in many parts of the world and where they have arrived in new regions, may become agricultural pests. Mole crickets have 3 life stages: eggs, nymphs, and adults. Most of their lives in these stages are spent underground, but adults have wings and disperse in the breeding season. They vary in their diet. Some species are herbivores, mainly feeding on roots. Others are omnivores, including worms and grubs in their diet, and a few are largely predatory. Male mole crickets have an exceptionally loud song. They sing from a burrow that opens out into the air in the shape of an exponential horn. The song is an almost pure tone, modulated into chirps. It is used to attract females, either for mating, or for indicating favorable habitats for them to lay their eggs. In Zambia, mole crickets are thought to bring good fortune, while in Latin America, they are said to predict rain. In Florida, where Neoscapteriscus mole crickets are not native, they are considered pests, and various biological controls have been used. Gryllothalpa species have been used as food in West Java, Vietnam, Thailand, Laos, and the Philippines. Description. Mole crickets vary in size and appearance, but most of them are of moderate size for an insect, typically between 3.2 and 3.5 centimeters, 1.3 and 1.4 in long as adults. They are adapted for underground life and are cylindrical in shape and covered with fine, dense hairs. The head, forelimbs, and prothorax are heavily sclerotized, but the abdomen is rather soft. 1. The head bears 2 thread-like antennae and a pair of beady eyes. 2. The 2 pairs of wings are folded flat over the abdomen. In most species, the forewings are short and rounded and the hind wings are membranous and reach or exceed the tip of the abdomen. However, in some species, the hind wings are reduced in size and the insect is unable to fly. The forelegs are flattened for digging, but the hind legs are shaped somewhat like the legs of a true cricket. However, these limbs are more adapted for pushing soil, rather than leaping, which they do rarely and poorly. The nymphs resemble the adults apart from the absence of wings and genitalia. The wing pads become larger after each successive molt. 3. The Gryllothalpidae are a monophyletic group in the order Orthoptera, grasshoppers, locusts, and crickets. Cladistic analysis of mole cricket morphology in 2015 identified 6 tribes, of which 4 were then new: Indioscapterini, Scaptericinae, Triomescapterini, Gryllothalpellini and Neocertellini, Gryllothalpinae, and 2 existing tribes, Scaptericini and Gryllothalpini, are revised. 4. The group name is derived straightforwardly from Latin gryllus, cricket, and talpa, mole. 5. Within the extant subfamilies, genera include 6. Gryllothalpinae. Genus Burmagryllothalpa, 7th Burmese amber, Myanmar, Cenomanian mole cricket. Temporal range, Lower Cretaceous recent. Gryllothalpa brachyptera. Scientific classification domain, Eukaryota kingdom, Animalia phylum, Arthropoda class, Insecta order, Orthoptera suborder, Encephera infraorder, Gryllodea superfamily, Gryllothalpoidea. Family, Gryllothalpidae. Saussure, 1870. Distribution of Gryllothalpa, Scapteriscus, Neocertilla. Scaptericinae. A stem group fossil, Crototetraspinus, is known from the Lower Cretaceous of Brazil. 9. 2 specimens of Marchandia magnifica in amber have been found in the Lower Cretaceous of Charente-Maritime in France. 10. They are somewhat more abundant in the Tertiary amber of the Baltic and Dominican regions. Impressions are found in Europe and the American Green River Formation. 11. Pygmy mole crickets are members of the suborder Califera. Convergent evolution. Mole crickets are not closely related to the pygmy mole crickets, the Tridactyloidea, which are in the grasshopper suborder Califera rather than the cricket suborder Encephera. The 2 groups, and indeed their resemblance in form to the mammalian mole family Talpidae with their powerful front limbs, form an example of convergent evolution, both developing adaptations for burrowing. 12. Behavior. Adults of most species of mole cricket can fly powerfully, if not with agility, but males do so infrequently. The females typically take wing soon after sunset, and are attracted to areas where males are calling, which they do for about an hour after sunset. This may be to mate, or they may be influenced by the suitability of the habitat for egg laying, as demonstrated by the number of males present and calling in the vicinity. 1. Life cycle. Life cycle of the European mole cricket, from Richard Lydecker's Royal Natural History, 1879. Mole crickets undergo incomplete metamorphosis. When nymphs hatch from eggs, they increasingly resemble the adult form as they grow and pass through a series of up to 10 molts. After mating, a period of 1 to 2 weeks may occur before the female starts laying eggs. She burrows into the soil to a depth of 30 centimeters, 12 in, 72 centimeters, 28 in, has been seen in the laboratory, and lays a clutch of 25 to 60 eggs. Neoscapteriscus females then retire, sealing the entrance passage, but in Gryllothalpa and Neocortilla species, the female has been observed to remain in an adjoining chamber to tend the clutch. Further clutches may follow over several months, according to species. Eggs must be laid in moist ground, and many nymphs die because of insufficient moisture in the soil. The eggs hatch in a few weeks, and as they grow, the nymphs consume a great deal of plant material either underground or on the surface. The adults of some species of mole crickets may move as far as 8 kilometers, 5.0 miles, during the breeding season. Mole crickets are active most of the year, but overwinter as nymphs or adults in cooler climates, resuming activity in the spring. 1. Burrowing. Fossorial front leg of a Gryllothalpa mole cricket. Mole crickets live almost entirely below ground, digging tunnels of different kinds for the major functions of life, including feeding, escape from predators, attracting a mate by singing, mating, and raising of young. 13. Their main tunnels are used for feeding and for escape. They can dig themselves underground very rapidly, and can move along existing tunnels at high speed both forwards and backwards. Their digging technique is to force the soil to either side with their powerful, shovel-like forelimbs, which are broad, flattened, toothed, and heavily sclerotized. The cuticle is hardened and darkened. 13. Males attract mates by constructing specially shaped tunnels in which they sing. 13. Mating takes place in the male's burrow. The male may widen a tunnel to make room for the female to mount, though in some species, mating is tail to tail. 13. Females lay their eggs either in their normal burrows or in specially dug brood chambers, which are sealed when complete in the case of the genus Neoscapteriscus. 13, or not sealed in the case of genera Gryllothalpa and Neocortilla. Song. 014. Song of Gryllothalpa. Gryllothalpa. Male mole cricket in singing position in burrow. The burrow is shaped as a double exponential horn with bulb, forming an effective resonator. A. Male mole crickets sing by stridulating, always underground. 14. In Gryllothalpa. Gryllothalpa. The song is based on an almost pure tone at 3.5 kHz, loud enough to make the ground vibrate 20 centimeters all round the burrow. In fact, the song is unique in each species. In G. Gryllothalpa, the burrow is somewhat roughly sculpted. In G. vini, the burrow is smooth and carefully shaped, with no irregularities larger than 1 millimeter. In both species, the burrow has 2 openings at the soil surface. At the other end is a constriction, then a resonating bulb, and then an escape tunnel. A burrow is used for at least a week. The male positions himself head down with his head in the bulb, and his tail is near the fork in the tunnel. 14, 16. Mole crickets stridulate like other crickets by scraping the rear edge of the left forewing, which forms a plectrum, against the lower surface of the right forewing, which has a ratchet-like series of asymmetric teeth. The more acute edges face backwards, as do those of the plectrum. The plectrum can move forward with little resistance, but moving it backwards makes it catch each tooth, setting up a vibration in both wings. The sound-producing stroke is the raising, levation, of the wings. The resulting song resembles the result of modulating a pure tone with a 66 Hz wave to form regular chirps. In G. vini, the wing levator muscle, which weighs 50 milligrams, can deliver 3.5 milliwatts of mechanical power. G. Gryllothalpa can deliver about 1 milliwatt. G. vini produces an exceptionally loud song from half an hour after sunset, continuing for an hour. It can be heard up to 600 meters away. At a distance of 1 meter from the burrow, the sound has a mean power over the stridulation cycle up to 88 decibels. The loudest recorded peak power was about 92 decibels. At the mouths of the burrow, the sound reaches around 115 decibels. G. Gryllothalpa can deliver a peak sound pressure of 72 decibels and a mean of about 66 decibels. The throat of the horn appears to be tuned, offering low inductive reactance, making the burrow radiate sound efficiently. The efficiency increases when the burrow is wet and absorbs less sound. Mole crickets are the only insects that construct a sound-producing apparatus. Given the known sensitivity of a cricket's hearing, 60 decibels, a night-flying G. vini female should be able to detect the male's song at a range of 30 meters. This compares to about 5 meters for a typical Gryllus cricket that does not construct a burrow. The loudness of the song is correlated with the size of the male and the quality of the habitat, both indicators of male attractiveness. The loudest males may attract 20 females in one evening, while a quieter male may attract none. This behavior enables acoustic trapping. Females can be trapped in large numbers by broadcasting a male's song very loudly. 17, 18, 19. Food. Mole crickets vary in their diets. Some, like the tawny mole cricket, are herbivores, others are omnivores, feeding on larvae, worms, roots, and grasses, and others, like the southern mole cricket, are mainly predaceous. 2021. They leave their burrows at night to forage for leaves and stems, which they drag underground before consumption, as well as consuming roots underground. 3. Predators, parasites, and pathogens. Besides birds, toads, and insectivorous mammals, the predators of mole crickets include subterranean assassin bugs, wolf spiders, and various beetles. 22. The South American nematode Steinerma scaptericea kills Neocapteriscus mole crickets by introducing bacteria into their bodies, causing an overwhelming infection. 23. Steinerma neocortilla is native to Florida and attacks native Neocortilla hexadactyla mole crickets. 24. Parasitoid wasps of the genus Lara Hymenoptera, Crabronidae attack mole crickets, the female laying an egg on the external surface of the mole cricket, and the larva developing externally on the mole cricket host. Ormia dipleta diptera. Tachinidae is a specialized parasitoid of mole crickets in the genus Neoscapteriscus. The fly's larva hatch from eggs inside her abdomen. She is attracted by the call of the male mole cricket and deposits a larva or more on any mole cricket individual, just as many females as males with which she comes in contact. 25. Specialist predators of mole cricket eggs in China and Japan include the bombardier beetle Stenaptinus jessoensis, whereas in South America, they include the bombardier beetle Phoropsippus equinoctialis, Coleoptera. Carabidi, the adult beetle lays eggs near the burrows of mole crickets, and the beetle larvae find their way to the egg chamber and eat the eggs. 26. Fungal diseases can devastate mole cricket populations during winters with sudden rises of temperature and thaws. 27. The fungus Bovaria bassiana can overwhelm adult mole crickets. 28. And several other fungal, microsporidian, and viral pathogens have been identified. 22. Mole crickets evade predators by living below ground, and vigorously burrowing if disturbed at the surface. As a last-ditch defense, they eject a foul-smelling brown liquid from their anal glands when captured. 29. They can also bite. 30. Distribution. Mole crickets are relatively common, but because they are nocturnal and spend nearly all their lives underground in extensive tunnel systems, they are rarely seen. They inhabit agricultural fields and grassy areas. They are present in every continent except Antarctica. By 2014, 107 species had been described and more species are likely to be discovered, especially in Asia. Neoscapteriscus didactylus is a pest species, originating in South America. It has spread to the West Indies and New South Wales in Australia. 31. Gryllotalpa africana is a major pest in South Africa. Other Gryllotalpa species are widely distributed in Europe, Asia, and Australia. 32. They are native to Britain, as to Western Europe, but the former population of G. gryllotalpa may now be extinct in mainland Britain. 33. Surviving in the Channel Islands. 34. Invasive mole crickets and their biological control. Invasive species are those that cause harm in their newly occupied area, where biological control may be attempted. The first detected invasive mole cricket species was Neoscapteriscus didactylus, a South American species reported as a pest in St. Vincent, West Indies, as early as 1837. By 1900, it was a major agricultural pest in Puerto Rico. It had probably slowly expanded its range northwards, island by island, from South America. 31. The only biological control program against N. didactylus was in Puerto Rico, and it succeeded in establishing the parasitoid wasp Lara bicolor from Amazonian Brazil. 35. In 2001, N. didactylus in Puerto Rico seemed to be a pest only in irrigated crops and turf. Small-scale experimental applications of the nematode Steinerma scapteraceae were made in irrigated turf, but survival of the nematode was poor. 36. Very much later, this same species was reported as a pest in Queensland, Australia, presumably arriving by ship or plane. 37. The next detected invasive species was in the late 19th century in Hawaii, probably by ship. It was named as Gryllotalpa africana, but much later as perhaps G. orientalis. It was not identified as Gryllotalpa krishnani until 2020. 38. It attacked sugarcane and was targeted with Lara polita from the Philippines in 1925, apparently successfully. 39. The next detection was in Georgia, USA, and at that time was assumed to be N. didactylus from the West Indies. 2. It was, in fact, 3 South American Neoscapteriscus species, N. abbreviatus, N. vicinus, and N. borellii, probably having arrived in ship ballast. They caused major problems for decades as they spread in the southeastern USA. 40. Scapteriscus mole cricket populations had built up since the early decades of the 20th century and damaged pastures, lawns, playing fields, and vegetable crops. From the late 1940s, chlordane had been the insecticide of choice to control them, but when chlordane was banned by the US EPA in the 1970s, ranchers were left with no economic and effective control method. Especially to aid Florida ranchers, a project that became known as the UF-IFAS Mole Cricket Research Program was initiated in 1978. In 1985, a multiple-authored report was published on accomplishments. 41. In 1988, an account was published on prospects for biological control. 42. And in 1996 an account of promising results with biological control. 43. The program ended in 2004 after 25 years of running monitoring stations, and in 2006 a summary publication announced success, a 95% reduction in mole cricket numbers in northern Florida, with biological control agents spreading potentially to all parts of Florida. 44. Efforts to use Lara bicolor as a biological control agent in Florida began by importing a stock from Puerto Rico. It became established in a small area of southeastern Florida, but had little effect on Neoscapteriscus populations. 45. A stock from Bolivia became established in northern Florida and spread widely, with some help, to most of the rest of the state and neighboring states. 46. Its survival depends upon the availability of suitable nectar sources. 47. 48. Once gravid female Ormia dipleta flies were found to be attracted to the song of Neoscapteriscus males in South America. 49. A path to trap these flies with synthetic mole cricket songs was opened. Experimentation then led to a rearing method. 50. Laborious rearing of over 10,000 flies on mole cricket hosts allowed releases of living fly pupae at many sites in Florida from the far northwest to the far south, mainly on golf courses, and mainly in 1989-1991. Populations were established, began to spread, and were monitored by use of synthetic mole cricket song. Eventually, the flies were found to have a continuous population from about 29 degrees north then south to Miami, but the flies failed to survive the winter north of about 29 degrees north. Shipment and release of the flies to states north of Florida was thus a wasted effort. As the flies had been imported from 23 degrees south in Brazil and could not overwinter north of 29 degrees north, whether flies from 30 degrees south in Brazil might survive better in northern Florida was investigated in 1999, but they did not. The third biological control agent to target Neoscapteruscus in Florida was the South American nematode Steinermascapteraceae. 23 small-scale releases proved it could persist for years in mole cricket-infested sandy Florida soils. Its use as a biopesticide against Neoscapteruscus was patented, making it attractive to industry. Industrial-scale production on artificial diet allowed large-scale trial applications in pastures, 51, and on golf courses, 52, which succeeded in establishing populations in several counties, and these populations spread, but sales were disappointing, and the product was withdrawn from the market in 2014. Although experimental application was made in states north of Florida, only in southern Georgia was establishment of the nematode verified, suggesting little interest in the other states. As pests, the parasitoidal wasp Lara bicolor was introduced to Florida to help control Neoscapteruscus mole crickets there. The main damage done by mole crickets is as a result of their burrowing activities. As they tunnel through the top few centimeters of soil, they push the ground up in little ridges, increasing evaporation of surface moisture, disturbing germinating seeds, and damaging the delicate young roots of seedlings. 2. They are also injurious to turf and pasture grasses as they feed on their roots, leaving the plants prone to drying out and damage by use. 3. In their native lands, mole crickets have natural enemies that keep them under control. 53. This is not the case when they have been accidentally introduced to other parts of the world. In Florida from the 1940s through the 1980s, they were considered pests and were described as a serious problem. Their population densities have since declined greatly. A University of Florida entomology report suggests that South American Neoscapteruscus mole crickets may have entered the United States at Brunswick, Georgia, in ships ballast from southern South America around 1899, but were at that time mistakenly believed to be from the West Indies. 40. One possible remedy was biological pest control using the parasitoidal wasps Lara bicolor. 54. Another remedy that has been successfully applied is use of the parasitic nematode Steinermascapteraceae. When this is applied in strips across grassland, it spreads throughout the pasture, and potentially beyond, within a few months and not only controls the mole crickets, but also remains effective in the soil for future years. 39. In human culture. Mole cricket in a copper engraving by Wolf Helmhart von Hoberg, 1695. Folklore. In Zambia, Grillotalpa africana is held to bring good fortune to anyone who sees it. 55. In Latin America, Scapteruscus and Neocortilla mole crickets are said to predict rain when they dig into the ground. 56. In Japan, in the past, they seem to have been associated with the worms corpses, bugs that announce a person's sins to heaven in the Koshin or Kushin belief. As food. Grillotalpa mole crickets have sometimes been used as food in West Java and Vietnam. 57. In Thailand, mole crickets Thai, krashin, are valued as food in Isan. They are usually eaten fried along with sticky rice. 58. In the Philippines, they are served as a delicacy called camaro in the province of Pampanga, 59, 60, and are a tourist attraction. 61, 62. They are also served in parts of northern Luzon. 57. Arawan, or susuhong, in Ilocano language is a delicacy or exotic food than June beetle or salagubang. It is found in Bintar, Ilocos Norte and is sold at P900 per kilo. 63. Notes. A. Drawing based on Bennett Clark, 1970-14, with public domain insect from Lydecker 1879. Grillotalpa, commonly known as the European mole cricket, is widespread in Europe and has been introduced to the eastern United States. Its scientific name is derived from the Latin, gryllus cricket, and talpa, mole because of the fine dense fur which covers it and its subterranean habits, 2, and because of the mole-like forelegs adapted for digging, a good example of convergent evolution. Close-up of a Grillotalpa. Description. The body length is about 50 mm, 2.0 in males and 70 mm, 2.8 in females. The cricket is dark brown with a silky shimmer and yellowish underside and is covered with fine velvety hairs. The forelegs are powerful and modified for digging. The elytra are half the length of the abdomen and the wings are transparent and netted with veins. They are folded into pleats and seldom used as the cricket normally remains below the ground. 3. The males can be distinguished from the females by the open vein area in the forewing known as the harp, while the females lack the external ovipositor that is possessed by other crickets. 2. Range and habitat. This mole cricket occurs throughout much of the western Palearctic, but is replaced by similar species in the south and east, and becomes rare or absent towards the north. It is thought to be possibly extirpated from Ireland, given only one record from 1920. 4. Favored habitats include damp rich soils, flood plains, reservoir edges, irrigated and well-fertilized fields and vegetable gardens. 3. The family Grillotalpidae includes several similar species. The female cricket lays 100 to 350 eggs in an underground chamber in the spring. They hatch 10 to 20 days later and she guards them for another 2 to 3 weeks. The nymphs molt 6 times and take from 1 to 3 years to reach maturity. Adults and nymphs live underground throughout the year in extensive tunnel systems that may reach a depth of over a meter in the winter. They are omnivorous, feeding on roots, tubers and rhizomes and a range of soil invertebrates. They often leave neat circular holes in tuberous plants. The males occasionally produce a soft, churring song from within a specially constructed chamber in the burrow system. This acts to amplify the song, which is believed to be used for attracting females. The sounds are typically produced on warm, mild evenings in early spring, and they are similar to the song of the European nightjar Caprimulgus europaeus. 2 natural enemies include rooks, starlings and other birds, shrews, moles, ants, ground beetles, nematodes and mites. During winters interrupted by thaws, fungal diseases may cause mass deaths. 3. This cricket feeds on a wide range of crops and disturbs the soil with its burrowing activities. In countries where it is abundant, it is considered a pest as it damages cereals, legumes, perennial grasses, potatoes, vegetable crops, beet, sunflower, tobacco, hemp, flax and strawberry. It also is troublesome in nurseries where young plants may be killed, and damages the roots of vines, fruit and other trees. Control measures may include deep bottom plowing, treatments of the soil between rows of crops, trapping during the winter, pesticides, poison baits and soil fumigation. 3. Grillotalpa. Conservation status. Least concern IUCN 3.1, Europe. Scientific classification domain. Eukaryota kingdom. Animalia phylum. Arthropoda class. Insecta order. Orthoptera suborder. Encephera family. Grillotalpidae genus. Grillotalpa species. G. Grillotalpa binomial name. Grillotalpa. Linnaeus, 1758. Synonyms. Acheta grillotalpa, Linnaeus 1758, Grillotalpa vulgaris Latreille 1804. Biology. Economic significance. Grillotalpa stridulation. Song of Grillotalpa problems playing this file. See media help. Status, UK. Although relatively common in many parts of mainland Europe, in the United Kingdom G. grillotalpa is considered endangered as there have been only 4 confirmed sightings between 1970 and 2001. 2. It used to occur in 33 vice counties, mainly across southern England but also in South Wales, western Scotland and Northern Ireland. Its range has contracted, although there has been a confirmed sighting in the Findhorn hinterlands, Scotland. There is an action plan that aims to maintain any surviving colonies, establish a captive breeding program and establish self-sustaining colonies throughout its former range. 5. In 2014, a colony of mole crickets was found persisting in the New Forest. 6. It is now understood that G. grillotalpa is a species group that includes a number of cryptic species which can be distinguished most readily by their song patterns. The migratory locust, Locusta migratoria, is the most widespread locust species, and the only species in the genus Locusta. It occurs throughout Africa, Europe, Asia, Australia and New Zealand. Because of the vast geographic area it occupies, which comprises many different ecological zones, numerous subspecies have been described. However, not all experts agree on the validity of some of these subspecies. Close-up of a Locusta migratoria. Many other species of grasshopper with gregarious and possibly migratory behavior are referred to as locusts in the vernacular, including the widely distributed desert locust. At 6.5 gbp, 1. The migratory locust possesses one of the largest known insect genomes. 2. Polyphenism. The migratory locust is polyphenic. It transitions between 2 main phenotypes in response to population density, the solitary phase and the gregarious phase. As the density of the population increases, the locust transforms progressively from the solitary phase towards the gregarious phase with intermediate phases. Solitaire equals solitary phase, right pointing arrow transcends congregans, intermediate form, right pointing arrow gregarious phase, right pointing arrow transcends dissocians, intermediate form, right pointing arrow solitaire equals solitary phase. Pigmentation and size of the migratory locust vary according to its phase, gregarious or solitary form, and its age. Gregarious nymphs have a yellow to orange covering with black spots. Solitary nymphs are green or brown. The gregarious adult is brownish with yellow, the latter color becoming more intense and extensive on maturation. The solitary adult is brown with varying extent of green color depending on the color of the vegetation. Gregarious adults vary in size between 40 and 60 millimeters according to the sex. They are smaller than the solitary adults. The phase transition may be mediated by DNA methylation in the brain. Expression of the DNA methyltransferase gene DNMT3 is high in the brain of the gregarious form, decreases in gregarious locusts when they are isolated, and increases in solitary locusts when they are crowded. Knockdown reduces phase-related locomotor activity. 3. Transcriptionally, DNMT3 is linked with phase core transcriptional factor, hormone receptor HR3. 3. Increased extracellular K+ was found to cause membrane depolarization in muscle-activating nerves by Hoyle 1953. This then in turn reduces the nerve potential, with the final result of reducing the force output of said muscle. He also found chronic cold temperatures to increase K+ in the hemolymph. These changes affect L. migratoria's nerve states because, as with insects and animals in general, nerve cells have a high K permeability, which allows K+ S transmembrane distribution to determine most cellular diffusion potential. This is shaping and will continue to shape the distribution of L. migratoria's range under climate change. 4. Economic impact. Adult female top, adult male bottom left, 5th instar nymph bottom right. Migratory locust. Female migratory locust. Conservation status. Least concern IUCN 3.1. Scientific classification domain. Eukaryota kingdom. Animalia phylum. Arthropoda class. Insecta order. Orthoptera suborder. Calyphora family. Acrididae subfamily. Edapodinae tribe. Locustini genus. Locusta. Linnaeus, 1758. Species. L. migratoria binomial name. Neurochemistry. Relationship with humans. Sound of Locusta migratoria. Field. Prop. Locusts are highly mobile, and usually fly with the wind at a speed of about 15 to 20 kilometers per hour, 9.3 to 12.4 miles per hour. Swarms can travel 5 to 130 kilometers or more in a day. Locust swarms can vary from less than 1 square kilometer to several hundred square kilometers with 40 to 80 million individuals per square kilometer. An adult locust can consume its own weight, several grams, in fresh food per day. For every million locusts, 1 ton of food is eaten. In Africa, the last serious widespread plague of L.M. migratorioids occurred from 1928 to 1942. Since then, environmental transformations have made the development of swarms from the African migratory locust unlikely. Nevertheless, potential outbreaks are constantly monitored as plagues can be devastating. The Malagasy migratory locust L.M. capito still regularly swarms, roughly twice every 10 years. The desert locust, which is very similar to the African migratory locust, remains a major threat too. Locust survey and control are primarily the responsibility of the Ministry of Agriculture in locust-affected countries and are operations undertaken by national locust units. The Food and Agriculture Organization (FAO) of the United Nations provides information on the general locust situation to all interested countries and gives warnings and forecasts to those countries in danger of invasion. As food. The migratory locust is an edible insect. 5-6 in Europe, the migratory locust is officially approved for the use in food in Switzerland since May 2017. 7. On the 2nd of July 2021, the European Food Safety Agency published a scientific opinion stating that the consumption of migratory locust in frozen, dried or ground state is safe for humans. 8. On the 12th of November 2021, the EU member states gave their green light for the EU Commission to authorize the placing on the market of migratory locust as a food. This is one of the final steps in the novel food authorization procedure. As a next step, the Commission will now adopt a legal act. 9. Locusta migratoria. Linnaeus, 1758. Synonyms. Subspecies of Locusta migratoria. L.M. migratorioids female, solitary. L.M. migratorioids male, solitary. L. migratoria is found over a vast geographic area, and its range covers many different ecological zones. Because of this, numerous subspecies have been described. However, not all experts agree on the validity of some of these subspecies. Honeydew secretion. Honeydew is a sugar-rich sticky liquid, secreted by aphids, some scale insects, and many other true bugs and some other insects as they feed on plant sap. When their mouthpart penetrates the phloem, the sugary, high-pressure liquid is forced out of the anus of the insects, allowing them to rapidly process the large volume of sap required to extract essential nutrients present at low concentrations. Honeydew is particularly common as a secretion in hemipteran insects and is often the basis for trophobiosis. 1. Some caterpillars of Lycaenidae butterflies and some moths also produce honeydew. 2. In addition to various sugars, honeydew contains small amounts of amino acids, other organic compounds, and inorganic salts with its precise makeup affected by factors such as insect species, host plant species, and whether a symbiotic organism is present. 1. 3. An aphid produces honeydew for an ant in an example of mutualistic symbiosis. Honeydew drops on leaves. Bald-faced hornet sips honeydew from a Dischalcaspis curcusmama gall covered by sooty mold. Magicicada cassini, cicada rain, slow motion. Honeydew-producing insects, like cicadas, pierce phloem ducts to access the sugar-rich sap. The excess fluid released by cicadas as honeydew is called cicada rain. 4-5. The sap continues to bleed. Honeydew-producing insects, like cicadas, pierce phloem ducts to access the sugar-rich sap. The excess fluid released by cicadas as honeydew is called cicada rain. 4-5. The sap continues to bleed after the insects have moved on, leaving a white sugar crust called manna. 6. Ants may collect, or milk, honeydew directly from aphids and other honeydew producers, which benefit from their presence due to their driving away predators such as lady beetles or parasitic wasps. See Crematogaster perinae. Animals and plants in a mutually symbiotic arrangement with ants are called myrmecophiles. In Madagascar, some gecko species in the genera Phelsuma and Lygodactylus are known to approach flated plant hoppers on tree trunks from below and induce them to excrete honeydew by head-nodding behavior. The plant hopper then raises its abdomen and excretes a drop of honeydew almost right onto the snout of the gecko. 7. Honeydew can cause sooty mold on many ornamental plants. It also contaminates vehicles parked beneath trees, and can then be difficult to remove from glass and bodywork. Honeydew is also secreted by certain fungi, particularly ergot. 8. Honeydew is collected by certain species of birds, mosquitoes, 9, 10, wasps, stingless bees, 11, and honey bees, which process it into a dark, strong honeydew honey. This is highly prized in parts of Europe and Asia for its reputed medicinal value. Parachartergus fraternis, a eusocial wasp species, collects honeydew to feed to their growing larvae. 12. Recent research has also documented the use of honeydew by over 40 species of wild, native, mostly solitary bees in California. 13. Mythology. In Norse mythology, dew falls from the ash tree Yggdrasil to the earth, and according to the prose Edda book Gylfaginning, this is what people call honeydew and from it bees feed. 14. In Greek mythology, meli, or honey, drips from the manna ash Fraxinus ornis, with which the Melii, or ash tree nymphs, nurse the infant god Zeus on the island of Crete. 15, as in the hymn to Zeus by Callimachus. Honeydew is referenced in the last lines of Samuel Coleridge's poem Kubla Khan, perhaps because of its mythological connotations. Nectar-producing trees. Honeydew puddle under a tree. Dates. Amaticis libicus is attracted to certain cultivars of the date palm tree. The honeydew-producing insects prefer the medjool variety to the deglet nor in Israel, where they have been observed in the Araba Valley. Very dense insect populations may have some adverse effects. Different methods of controlling the insects, including natural and chemical, have been studied. 16. Eucalyptus. In eucalypt forests, production of both the honeydew nectar and manna tends to increase in spring and autumn. Eucalyptus can produce even more manna than honeydew nectar. The sugar glider eats both, licking the nectar from branches. Other species attracted to the nectar include the feather-tailed glider, brush-tailed phascogale, and brown antechinus. Most trees are not able to produce sap if the phloem duct becomes damaged by mechanical processes. 6. Oaks. The acorn weevil Curculio glandium habitually bores into the young acorns of oak trees. This injury can cause the tree to release a sweet honeydew, thought to attract wasps that can parasitize the weevil within its acorns. Honeybees sometimes collect this substance, in addition to honeydew from aphids feeding in oak forests, and use it to produce oak honey, an unusual varietal sold by specialist beekeepers. 17. 18. Tamarisk. Two-scale insects in the Sinai, Trabutina minipara and Nojococcus serpentinus, feed on tamarisk trees. They secrete a sugary nectar that turns white when it hardens. 19. Honeydew honey. The kind of honey made from when bees harvest off the honeydew of sap-eating insects is marked as honeydew honey or forest honey. It is notably darker and more viscous than typical honey. Honeydew honey typically contains more melazitos. It is prized in parts of Europe and New Zealand. 2021. See also. Honeydew secretion. Honeydew is a sugar-rich sticky liquid, secreted by aphids, some scale insects, and many other true bugs and some other insects as they feed on plant sap. When their mouthpart penetrates the phloem, the sugary, high-pressure liquid is forced out of the anus of the insects, allowing them to rapidly process the large volume of sap required to extract essential nutrients present at low concentrations. Honeydew is particularly common as a secretion in hemipteran insects and is often the basis for trophobiosis. 1. Some caterpillars of Lycaenidae butterflies and some moths also produce honeydew. 2. In addition to various sugars, honeydew contains small amounts of amino acids, other organic compounds, and inorganic salts with its precise makeup affected by factors such as insect species, host plant species, and whether a symbiotic organism is present. 1. 3. An aphid produces honeydew for an ant in an example of mutualistic symbiosis. Honeydew drops on leaves. Bald-faced hornet sips honeydew from a Dischalcaspis curcusmama gall covered by sooty mold. Magicicada cassini, cicada rain, slow motion. Honeydew-producing insects, like cicadas, pierce phloem ducts to access the sugar-rich sap. The excess fluid released by cicadas as honeydew is called cicada rain. 4. 5. The sap continues to bleed after the insects have moved on, leaving a white sugar crust called manna. 6. Ants may collect, or milk, honeydew directly from aphids and other honeydew producers, which benefit from their presence due to their driving away predators such as lady beetles or parasitic wasps. See Crematogaster perinae. Animals and plants in a mutually symbiotic arrangement with ants are called myrmecophiles. In Madagascar, some gecko species in the genera Phelsuma and Lygodactylus are known to approach flated plant hoppers on tree trunks from below and induce them to excrete honeydew by head nodding behavior. The plant hopper then raises its abdomen and excretes a drop of honeydew almost right onto the snout of the gecko. 7. Honeydew can cause sooty mold on many ornamental plants. It also contaminates vehicles parked beneath trees, and can then be difficult to remove from glass and bodywork. Honeydew is also secreted by certain fungi, particularly ergot. 8. Honeydew is collected by certain species of birds, mosquitoes, 9, 10, wasps, stingless bees, 11, and honey bees, which process it into a dark, strong honeydew honey. This is highly prized in parts of Europe and Asia for its reputed medicinal value. Parachartergus fraternis, a eusocial wasp species, collects honeydew to feed to their growing larvae. 12. Recent research has also documented the use of honeydew by over 40 species of wild, native, mostly solitary bees in California. 13. Mythology. In Norse mythology, dew falls from the ash tree Yggdrasil to the earth, and according to the prose Edda book Gylfaginning, this is what people call honeydew and from it bees feed. 14. In Greek mythology, meli, or honey, drips from the manna ash Fraxinus ornis, with which the meli, or ash tree nymphs, nurse the infant god Zeus on the island of Crete 15, as in the hymn to Zeus by Callimachus. Honey-dew is referenced in the last lines of Samuel Coleridge's poem Kubla Khan, perhaps because